Mr. President, thank you very much for joining us. You're 1 month into office. Your major things obviously are COVID and getting a budget in place. How are you trying to balance those two?
Well, Neil, first of all, thank you for having me. And let me just tell our viewers out there that we are well beyond 6 feet apart. That is why we are not using the mask. However, I want to take this opportunity, even before I answer your question, to appeal to all Guyanese to use the mask when you go out in the public. It is one of the greatest defense in minimizing the impact of the pandemic and the effect it can have on you. So I just wanted to take this opportunity as president to call upon all Guyanese to understand that it is of absolute critical importance that they start using the mask and use it consistently every day. Well, it's not quite a month as yet, but it feels much more than a month because of the work that has to be done. We came in at a time when the world over in Guyana is facing this great pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. And one of the key focus in dealing with the pandemic is to ensure that we have our testing capacity and capability improved, ensure that we have institutional arrangements in place to deal with the eventualities of COVID. Once we do more testing, and this is what the population has to understand, once we do more testing, once we become proactive, then we're going to see more positives. But the key to it is testing. So you can't minimize the testing. And what we are having now is a situation where we have a serious backlog because we don't have the infrastructure in terms of the PCR machine. We have a manual machine, and it cannot deal with the demand. So we took a decision to upgrade our PCR capability, and we're having, very soon we'll have an automated machine, automatic PCR machine that can do at least 600-700 tests per day. Now that is going to ramp up our testing capability, and what we're going to do is expand the testing. So that is, so a lot of time has been spent on COVID, dealing with it from a medical perspective, taking advice from the professionals, but also looking at the socio-economic impact, listening to the private sector, the Miners Association, and more or less getting contact with all the key players in our economy, in our country, in our society, so that we have a hold on what is taking place. And more importantly, we have a common understanding as to how we're dealing with COVID and how we're going to deal with the various sectors going forward. That and of course, a situation where more than 2 years we're without a budget, and we have some extraordinary spending that took place in the last 5 months has really left the Treasury empty in relation to what is available.
What do you mean by empty?
Well, I'll come to that. So in what is available to take our country forward. Let me give you some example. When we left very healthy balances in the Guyana forestry account. When we came in, we met a situation where they did not even have enough money in the forestry account to pay wages and overheads. So we had to approve the transfer of $350 million to help the Forestry Commission. The same with gaisuku. Although we had that $30 billion bond, we were in a situation where they did not have resources to pay wages and salaries. So we had to transfer another $600 million. The reserves in the gold account, all right, $25 billion is practically empty. And then we have a lot of liabilities. If I give you one example, on variation alone, on one project, one road project on the West Demerara, I saw a document of a variation of more than 900 million Guyana dollars on the variation for just one project. So when I say empty, it's not only empty from a physical standpoint, but empty in the way things were managed and the liabilities that are left there that this government is left with. And we're going to ensure that we do a comprehensive report on every aspect of the economy, on every sector, so that the Guyanese population can understand what is taking place. We met a situation where the capacity at GPL, we are producing far below what the peak load requires. We have seen a $10.2 billion loan, emergency loan to GPL to purchase generating set. You will think that if it was an emergency loan for 50 megawatts of power, then you will be ready to take the generators the next day or have the generators delivered the next day. However, the generators are still not delivered, and we don't even have the civil works completed for those generators to arrive in the country. So this is the type of situation we find ourselves in. The Central Housing and Planning Authority, the Housing Fund, is severely depleted. So this is the context in which we are plotting and planning the course for the emergency budget. And I'm hoping that by next week we can have Parliament convene and we can move towards having the budget laid in Parliament within 2 weeks. And that's the outside date, that's the emergency budget, so that we can start having resources available to deal with some of the pressing issues government is facing. The Ministry of Health has also reported to me, for example, that although we had resources spent for drugs and medical supplies, no drugs was ordered since 2017. So you have a situation outside of COVID where the persons with diabetes, a person who are suffering from pressure and so on, they don't have any drugs available for them. So we have to have emergency resources now made available to purchase those drugs. So it has really been the first few weeks has really been bringing together all the pieces, ensuring that we have a full assessment of the situation, and developing the strategies in the emergency budget to address the immediate concern and needs as we move towards the planning of a full budget early next year.
Mr. President, I get the sense that you're overhauling that entire response to COVID that was taking place over the last couple of months before you assumed office. Are you risking making the situation worse by doing that?
No, we are making the situation better, because we were only testing 40 to 60 per day. One day in last week we tested more than 300. We did more than 300 tests. So we're testing far more. We have taken away the political bureaucracy. It was a political, heavy, top control managed response to COVID. We have flattened it with the regional partners, international partners, and the professionals. This is led by the professionals. So it has really taken away the political hand from the management of COVID, right? I am guided by the technicians, I'm guided by the experts, and the society. The private sector also, they have done comprehensive documents and review of the economy. So those are all things that would have helped us in making decisions. So I would say the management structure is far more efficient now. It has less barriers, and it is very open and transparent.
Right. So, Mr. President, your budget it's an emergency budget which will last towards the end of the year. What's your thinking for the next budget? You're going to start planning immediately?
Definitely. Now let me explain what is going to take place. Now we have to raise capital also, and I'm going to deal with this in a very elaborate way. To achieve the housing programs, the program that we set for housing and other major infrastructure, we will have to raise capital. We will have to look at public-private partnership. We will have to look at ways in which we can motivate the local private sector to buy in and take part in a lot of these public sector projects. In generating jobs and creating wealth and opportunity, we are going to launch a series of incentives, packages for various sectors, the hotel industry, manufacturing, industrial development, livestock. Then we are going to raise capital to deal with housing, because we want a public-private partnership approach to housing. So housing is one of the areas in which we can create thousands of jobs very quickly. So that you will see that going on simultaneously whilst we are dealing with the emergency budget. and you will see us also commencing discussion on a long-term plan. That is the 5-year plan, the medium-term plan, and the holistic plan for a 1-year budget next year. So whilst we're going ahead with the emergency budget, we have already started work on the main budget early next year.
Who's going to present your budget?
Well, the responsibility for finance in Parliament for now will be taken up by the Vice President. So he has that responsibility, and I'm sure he will be presenting the budget.
So you're not moving to settling on a Minister of Finance very soon?
Not that I'm not moving, is that we're still considering and looking at different options, and coming up with the individual.
Right. So talk to me about your efforts to raise funds, raise capital, to carry out all these projects that you have in mind.
Well, you know, we have to understand that, first of all, we are in a situation where we have future revenue, but we're not going to focus on oil and gas alone. We are focusing on development of every other aspect of the economy. We have to get back sugar going. We have to find the right model for sugar, and we're going to keep the estates. We're going to ensure that we get investment for those estates. We're going to ensure we keep those jobs, we maintain those jobs. We're going to ensure we expand opportunities in the sugar belt areas. We are working to ensure that we safeguard jobs and livelihood opportunity in Region 10. We have to look at Region 2 to see what incentives we can give there to stimulate growth and economic development so that we can create wealth and create job opportunities there. We have to look at the hinterland communities, how we're going to tie them into the national job plan, right? And then we have to look at where the gaps in financing will be. So for example, if we can raise $200 million on the open market for housing, and we can have the local banking sector, the local private sector, and the builders coming together with the ministry, and we start 2,000-3,000 homes very quickly, right? Then the multiply effect would be tremendous in terms of economic opportunity, growth, expansion, job creation, and meeting the needs of the housing sector. So this is the approach. This is one of the approaches. It's not going to be a single barrel approach on development. It's going to be a very strong, hardcore, progressive, proactive, dynamic approach that will see us utilizing every aspect of development, whether it's public-private partnership. Let us take an example. If you have the Demerara Harbor Bridge, the new Demerara Harbor Bridge, we have already decided that we have to build into the future. It has to be a 4-lane bridge. We can have a purely private development, a public-private partnership, a design, finance, build, operate, own, transfer, a design, build, own, transfer. There are many models. So we are going to put out a prospectus inviting expressions of interest on every available possible model so that we can come up with the best model for us with the greatest sustainability ratio and financial soundness. And then we have to make decisions also on other major projects. We're going ahead with a hydro project. We have made it very clear that we're going to have natural gas. We have to develop the gas industry, and we're going to have a power plant, natural gas power plant. We're going to also invest in alternative energy. We have already spoken to the Indian government in having a $10 million facility for solar energy for the hinterland and riverine community, targeting more than 25,000 households. So these are all things that we have concretized in less than a month that you're going to see action on within the next 6 months, right? We already started discussion on how we're going to approach future development. Do we keep the Marriott? Do we sell the Marriott? What do we do? These are all decisions you will see coming very quickly as we accelerate the development and push the button in moving Guyana forward.
Explain to me, going back to COVID and ordinary people, you had said you've spoken about billions of dollars for households. How is that going to work?
Beautiful. Good question. So we have set aside $4.5 billion. I've asked the governor to examine if we can raise it for the $2 billion, right? Because the demand is just immense out there.
Where are you getting the money from?
Right now we are raising it because we don't have a budget, so you can't go to the consolidated fund. So we are raising it through treasury bills, a special treasury bill. All right, so that is where we are raising it from. But we are also already discussing with multilateral financial institutions reimbursing a lot of this expenditure. That is why we are doing it in accordance with international best practices. We have to set aside about $500 million for the education sector to get back schools ready and so on. We have to set aside money to help the vulnerable section of the society. Then we have to ensure the Liliendale facility that cannot be utilized right now. We have to bring it into operations at least for isolation purposes right now. So we have to invest about $100+ million there. We have to invest about $65 million in the new PCR automated machine, set aside $500 million for education, and then we have to target about 25,000 households in the hinterland and riverine community that are directly affected. We have sugar workers who were affected for over 2 years. We have the workers in Linden who are affected. So we have already started to look at the vulnerable group. And of course, we have to address our frontline workers. But we want to address our frontline workers in a more structured manner. And that we are looking at in the budget itself.
Right, so the assistance for vulnerable groups, how is that going to work? That's what I'm trying to understand. What's your thinking? Cash grants?
It will be cash grant. Some of it will be cash grants. Some of it will be household supplies. But most of it will be cash grant and direct transfers, like to education, direct transfer, to the health sector, direct transfer.
What do you mean by direct transfers?
Well, transfer of $500 million to education, and they have a program to get the schools ready to ensure they're sanitized, they're clean. So when we are ready for reopening, that we are not then looking at making the schools ready. Right now the schools are, you know this, I don't have to tell you, they're in no state of readiness.
So, sir, you have almost $100 million sitting in the U.S. Federal Reserve from the oil revenues so far. When this budget is passed and Parliament is in place, are you looking to access it immediately?
We have not even contemplated any expenditure from that as yet. All the expenditure I'm talking to you about is resources we are mobilizing with the multilateral agencies, bilateral sources, and from our local, from the treasury bill. So we have not contemplated using any resources from anywhere else. Right now, this is our focus.
Right. Sir, the former president has called this plan that you spoke about of reopening sugar estates fake news. I drove by Wales recently. It looks like a heap of scrap metal. Are you bluffing people that you will open these estates? Or talk to me about that.
Before the campaign, we knew what they did to Wales. They completely sold out everything at Wales. That is why we said for Wales, we will have to have a development authority and create new opportunities for the workers there. But we are committed to creating those new opportunities, and they will get those opportunities. We are going to have a special investment regime set aside for Wales in that Wales Development Authority to create wealth, create opportunity, build capacity, and bring back economic life and prosperity to that community.
You're not reopening Wales Sugar Estate?
Wales cannot be reopened. There is no estate there, as you rightfully said. They sold everything out. And that is why we said on the campaign, Wales will come under different dispensation. The other estates, we are fully committed, and you will see, we have started. And the mere fact that we have transferred $600 million to keep the workers going and to pay their salaries tells you of our commitment. We are committed to keeping the estates. They will be kept. They will be sustained, and we are going to find the investment and find the right model to make them sustainable.
Where are you going to find that model for, Mr. President? People can say that the PPP has promised this for a very long time and there wasn't a model. So are you taking my taxpayers' dollars and putting it into a failed project?
I would say to you that it is very insultive for anyone to even say that taxpayers' money were placed in something that is a failed project. Sugar carried this economy historically. Sugar carried this economy historically. And when we invested in sugar and subsidized sugar, it is the PPP that kept sugar going. It is the PPP that kept sugar going. And when we subsidized sugar, when the government subsidized sugar, it was because we understand that sugar is not only about the workers working in the estate. The socio-economic impact of those estates in the regions and communities in which they are located far outweighs the subsidies that we put. The drainage and irrigation services, the tax services, PAYE, community services, the link to other aspects of the economy, the link to the agricultural sector. When you look at the costs, the subsidy was basically nothing. The subsidy was fully justifiable. But what we are looking at now is an industry that is no longer based only on sugar. Sugar in many of the new global estates, sugar is just a byproduct. You look at energy production. You look at refinery, the opportunities for refinery, packaging, right? So it's a comprehensive mix of product. And the mere fact that you are seeing you have so much international private sector interests. Since I came in as president, I've seen files upon files of expression of interest for Skeldon. I've seen files upon files of expression of interest for Enmore, for Rose Hall, for Albion, for Wales. We should ask ourselves, these are sophisticated international private investors. If they see a dead opportunity, why would they go after it? It's finding the right model. And we are looking at finding that model. And I can say to you that we are going to find that model to ensure that we keep those jobs and sustain those communities.
So can I ask you, you've spoken about the sale of assets from gaisuku. Where's the revenue for that? Do you have an understanding of where it is?
Well, that is what I'm saying. Well, you have asked a question that you'll have to wait on for some answer there, Neil. The gaisuku assets and what NISIL did, that is, of course, is subject to review at the moment. And I would say let us wait. Let us wait the outcome of that.
Mr. President, to achieve your objectives for your government, you've obviously had to remove some people when you came into government. You've obviously been accused of witch hunting. Can you address those?
I would say to you that there is no witch hunting. And I am saying to you, and I would invite anyone to examine the entire public service and to see where there is witch hunting. I think we have to be decent human beings. If you're a political appointee and your political party is no longer in office, then you should be decent enough to do the decent thing. We shouldn't be in a position to justify this. If you're a political advisor to the president and you have a new president, you don't expect the new president to have his own political advisor. So we have to decide in life whether we want a political career or a professional career. And this is where the problem is in the country. Politicians believe that they have a right to a professional career whilst maintaining a political career. You have many of the advisors, they were campaigning openly and publicly on the platform. And they were campaigning against the agenda of my government. They were saying they had a superior agenda. So they don't believe and embrace that agenda of my government because they have a different political view. Now, that is their democratic right. But in understanding that that is your democratic right, you also have a responsibility to allow the new government space to implement its own program that you did not, that you had a public political difference about. So I would say to you, Neil, I invite anyone, examine the entire public service and see where there has been witch hunting, political appointees have to go. I mean, we can't expect anything different. Look at one example of Mahipal. He was working at Chronicle, held on to a job at local government in the region on the the permanent establishment. Did not go to office for months. How do we deal with it? So I think the time has come in this country when we have to understand that with our own action comes responsibility. And if we take action individually to move to a political career, then there are risks in that. And we can't cry foul when the outcome is not in our favor.
Finally, I want to ask you, Mr. President, how soon are you looking to engage Mr. Granger and other parties which contested these elections?
I've been engaging all the small parties consistently. From day one, on many issues, I've been engaging them. We are looking to further include them on as we look at boards and so on. So that engagement is continuous. It's sometime on a daily basis. In terms of the main opposition, I think we have to await Parliament, the convening of Parliament, so that the engagement at the parliamentary level can commence.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ian.